Strategic Risk Assessment: The March 2026 Escalation and Global Consequences. Strategic Overview: The New Security Paradigm in West Asia. The March 2026 escalation marks a definitive collapse of the regional security architecture established following Operation Midnight Hammer in June 2025. While the 2025 engagement was a localized 12-day effort to degrade nuclear infrastructure, Operation Epic Fury has inaugurated a state of uncontrolled escalation. According to the UN Secretary-General, the conflict has transitioned from tactical deterrence to a systemic dismantling of the Iranian state. This shift was punctuated by the targeting of the Supreme National Security Council, SNSC, and the Presidential Office in Tehran. Critically, the strategic context was altered not just by the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, but by the IDF strikes on the Assembly of Experts in Qom as it convened to select a successor, a move that disrupted the constitutional process of the Islamic Republic and forced the IRGC to internationalize the conflict to ensure regime survival. The resulting leadership vacuum and the status of the current power structure are as follows. Temporary Leadership Council. Governance is currently managed by a triumvirate consisting of President Masoud Pezeshkian, Judiciary Chief Gholam Hossein Mohseni Ajay, and Ayatollah Ali Reza Arafi. Role of Ali Reza Arafi. As a member of the Expediency Discernment Council and a close confidant of the late Khamenei, Arafi serves as the essential liaison to the clerical establishment in Qom, attempting to maintain religious legitimacy after the targeting of the Assembly of Experts. Status of Mujtaba Khamenei. Despite semi-official Iranian media, Mehr, claiming he is in full health, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has stated that Mujtaba is wounded and likely disfigured following the initial strikes on the leadership compound. Command fragmentation. The killing of 49 senior figures, including Major General Abdulrahim Musavi, and leadership from the Armed Forces General Staff, AFGS, has severely hampered the regime's ability to relay operational directives, leading to a breakdown in military coordination across the axis of resistance. This decapitation of the central nervous system represents a red line crossing that has necessitated Iran's direct strikes on Gulf infrastructure, shifting the conflict from a localized campaign into a global economic crisis. Evaluation of Iranian retaliatory strikes on Gulf maritime hubs. In a significant strategic pivot, Tehran has abandoned asymmetric proxy warfare in favor of direct state-led strikes against Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) infrastructure. This internationalization of the battlefield is designed to impose a direct cost on the US-led coalition by targeting the logistics and energy arteries of the West. The following table summarizes the impacts on primary maritime and commercial hubs. Target location, type of infrastructure impacted, operational status. Zayed Port, UAE. Major commercial hub, high-risk proximity to Al Dhafra Air Base. Operational suspensions, debris from intercepts causing civilian damage in the Al Baya area. Jebel Ali, UAE. U.S. Navy's largest port of call, major container hub. Maritime Security Program MSP vessel hit by 4 drones. Vessel rendered inoperable, suspensions ongoing. Port of Duqm, Oman. U.S. Navy logistics/RORO hub, fuel storage. Multiple drone strikes on fuel tankers confirmed. Significant operational paralysis reported by UKMTO. Fujairah, UAE. World's 3rd largest oil storage center, LNG/bunkering hub. Significant fires reported at the oil industry zone. Tanker traffic at a total standstill. Jask Port, Iran. Terminus for the Goreh-Jask pipeline, Hormuz bypass. Pipeline and port infrastructure destroyed by coalition strikes to prevent Iranian export bypass. Air defense efficacy and leaks. Regional air defenses have been tested at an unprecedented scale. The UAE Ministry of Defense reports that its systems have engaged 304 ballistic missiles and exactly 1,627 drones since the conflict began. While the interception rate remains statistically high, but the volume of leaks has resulted in hits on critical civilian and energy targets, including residential buildings in East Jerusalem and fuel tanks near Dubai International Airport. The IRGC's destruction of a second US-provided Atadad radar system in the UAE has further compromised the regional eye in the sky, allowing Iranian munitions greater freedom of movement. These strikes have effectively achieved a de facto blockade of the region's shipping lanes, as commercial traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has plummeted, and insurers have largely suspended coverage for the Persian Gulf. Energy market paralysis. The Strait of Hormuz and global production cuts. The Strait of Hormuz is currently experiencing a 70% reduction in commercial traffic, according to marine traffic data. This paralysis of the world's most vital energy choke point has moved the global market from a state of volatility into one of physical supply exhaustion. Production cuts and sovereignty risks. The so what layer of current production halts reveals a deeper systemic threat to regional stability. Qatar Energy. The halt in downstream production of urea, polymers, and methanol is a direct threat to global food security, as the loss of Qatar fertilizer urea exports disrupts international agricultural cycles. Iraq, Rumalia Field. The closure of the BP-operated Rumalia field due to storage saturation represents an absolute physical limit to Iraqi sovereignty. Without the ability to export, the Iraqi state is unable to generate the revenue required for basic governance, risking immediate state collapse and internal unrest.
price volatility, and emergency measures. Brent crude prices peaked at $120 per barrel at the outbreak of hostilities before easing to a current baseline of $92 per barrel, still a $20 increase for the month. To mitigate the shock, the IEA has authorized the release of 400 million barrels of emergency reserves, the largest in history. Critical risks to global energy security 30-day outlook. Exhaustion of physical buffers. The IEA's release is a finite stopgap. If the blockade persists beyond a month, the market will lose its primary stabilizing mechanism. Downstream agricultural collapse. Global fertilizer shortages originating from Qatar's halt will spike food prices, leading to secondary inflation in emerging markets. Refining and storage saturation. With over 4 million barrels of regional refining capacity already shut down, the physical inability to store further crude will lead to permanent reservoir damage if production remains halted. Diplomatic divergence, shifting stances of global power blocs. The international order is fracturing along ideological and economic lines. Japanese and Chinese media, including the Tokyo Shimbun and Xinhua, have characterized the March escalation as an outrageous act and a violation of the UN Charter, highlighting a growing disregard for international law by the US-Israeli coalition. Analysis of diplomatic positions. China. Beijing is hypersensitive to the precedent of US-led regime change. Beyond the diplomatic condemnation, China's priority is the evacuation of 3,000-plus citizens and protecting its teapot refineries. President Xi Jinping's requested delay of his March visit to Washington signals a significant cooling in bilateral relations. Russia. While Foreign Minister Lavrov officially calls for de-escalation and the safety of civilians, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has acknowledged that rising oil prices have boosted Russian revenues. Crucially, the US temporarily eased sanctions on Russian oil to stabilize domestic gas prices, a major diplomatic divergence that has provided Moscow with a significant financial windfall. The UK and Europe. The E3 face a crippling dilemma. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer summarized the top